Welcome to the Convergent Impact Leadership Podcast. I'm Eric Savickas, a leadership coach, retired Army officer, and someone who cares deeply about building people-centered leadership in the fire service. This podcast is a place for honest conversations, practical insights, and leadership ideas that help teams grow stronger, inside the firehouse and beyond. Whether you're leading a crew or shaping a department, I'm glad you're here. Today, I am joined by Pepper Valdez, the fire chief of Mountain View Fire Rescue here in Colorado. Chief Valdez recently stepped into this role after spending 26 years with the Billings Fire Department in Montana, working his way through every rank and serving as fire chief for the last 4 years. Over his career, he's developed a reputation as a steady people-first leader with a strong operational mindset and a real passion for building organizations that last. What stood out to me as I was learning more about Pepper is how intentionally he's approached leadership transitions, both for himself and for the organizations he's served. He's thoughtful about timing, effectiveness, and what it really means to lead people well through change. Pepper, I appreciate you taking the time to join us today. Looking forward to this conversation.
Well, thank you, Eric. I certainly appreciate you inviting me onto your show. I'm always excited to talk about leadership and how it equates to organizations and people building.
Yeah, ever since I met you last summer when you took the reins at Mountain View, I've been wanting to have you on, and so I'm glad that the timing worked out now. So let's get into it. You spent your entire career up until now in one department in Billings, and you worked through every rank or multiple positions there in the department. When you look back, what did that look like for you? How did it feel? What were some moments and experiences that you had that shaped you most to where you are today?
Yeah, great question. I had multiple mentors, many people that I could look up to that added value in so many different areas, whether it was work ethic or how you treated people or just pure technical knowledge. I was very fortunate, like I said, that these folks were very willing to invest time in me, and show me the ropes, essentially. Again, not just in what the job entailed, but how you treat people was a big deal. I'm a firm believer that you can take away something from every single person you meet in life. If you've had any kind of time with them, any kind of a conversation with these folks, you can pull something away from them. You make these little tiny mental notes as we continue to grow and evolve as people and develop our personalities and beliefs. One instance that I can talk about that has stayed with me my entire career. I was a brand new pup in the fire service, and maybe a couple weeks into the job was doing truck checks on the apparatus floor. And just so happens that the chief of the department was coming out across the apparatus floor. I was walking in the opposite direction for another rig. We crossed paths. I said, "Good morning, chief." And that chief he looked at me, didn't say a word, and kept on going. And I remember how that made me feel. I felt like I was gum on his shoe. And I said to myself, I will never, if I ever get into a position of influence, never ever treat anybody that way, on or off the job. Doesn't matter. I don't care, because it's all about how you treat people.
Hmm.
And I'll never forget how that felt. And people don't forget. You get one shot at a first impression, right? And I try. Doesn't happen all the time, but I try to be as genuine as possible with the hellos and the good mornings and making sure I ask, how are they doing? Because I am interested. Sometimes, maybe that chief had something going on in his head. I don't know, but I didn't forget about it. And that was one thing that really stuck with
Yeah, I was going to ask if you thought that that chief was just in the zone and thinking about something else, or maybe it was deliberate that you were the new guy and the new guy didn't deserve the chief's time. I don't know. Often a lot of times we as leaders say to ourselves, "Man, I messed that up. I could have done that better," or "That wasn't the best version of myself." But other times, maybe you're oblivious, right? But you're right. To your point, you on the receiving end, it doesn't matter where his headspace was, right? It still felt a certain way.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember hearing a story, and it was just an experiment that the students didn't know about. And it was a Harvard MBA program. And these students had spent 2 years of their lives in this program. It comes down to the final exam, and they're all sitting down. And of course, it was the old Scantron test back then, and some stuff handwritten. It's not like it is today, computer based and internet based. The professor said, "You see all the answer or all the questions on the test. I want you to flip that over, and I want you to write the name of the janitor of this building. That's all I want." And nobody could do it. And he says, "You all fail." And he said, "The number one thing you need to learn about leadership, know everybody that's around you and understand that every single person in your organization is important and is critical to the mission." And so
That's powerful.
obviously that wasn't the case. Yeah, it was very powerful. Obviously that wasn't the case. The people didn't fail, but it drove home that point. And, that's the same thing. Like, you know, football team, hockey team, whatever, wins the world championship. I want to make sure that the janitor is getting a ring too,
Uh-huh.
because they're just as important as your best player or the owners.
So how do you then go from that new guy on the apparatus floor with the experience that you had to 26 years later in Billings deciding that I think I read that you said that you realized you reached your maximum effectiveness there. What was it that gave you that realization? Did you walk by somebody on the apparatus floor and not respond when he said good morning and you're like, "Okay, I'm done here now." Or was there something else that went into it?
It was a couple things, Eric. And thanks for that question. I pride myself on being a people builder and trying to get people what it is that they need to succeed. One of the first questions I ask people when I first meet them and bring them in and talk with them is, this is your career. What do you want to do with it? How can I help you get to where you want to be? And try to set them up for success, because we reap the benefit of that as an organization, and the community reaps the benefit of that, because the organization should be running smoothly if people are engaged and happy about where they are. Right. So to answer your question, it was a couple things. I spent a lot of time and effort with a handful of folks that were very interested in becoming executive chiefs and becoming the chief. I always tell people, whether you want to be the chief or not, work towards that regardless. Work just like you want to be the chief. And even if you don't want to, because you're going to have so much more knowledge and understanding and perspective. Well, we were to a point where, and I always said jokingly, but there's some truth behind it. If I walk across the street and I get wiped out by a bus, there should be people waiting in the queue, and this organization should not miss a beat. It should move on like I didn't even exist. And we were pretty much six deep with folks that were qualified to be the chief. And I felt very confident and comfortable in these people. And so that was the point where I said, okay, the only way they're going to get the opportunity is if I get out of the way. And 30 years in that system up there, 26 with Billings Fire, but 30 years total in public safety. It was time to move on and let somebody else have that shot. And blessed because one of those folks did get the position, and they're the chief of Billings Fire today. So I'm very proud and happy. The other side, the reason why I say this is because you recognize that some of the folks around you, they have a little bit more influence than you, and are the decision makers that are above you don't have that same vision. They're not aligning. And that was when I was like, okay, I need to get out of the way. They didn't feel that the fire service was as important
Mm,
for the community as, say, the Parks and Recs
I
department,
gotcha.
which is okay, right? That's okay. Everyone has their idea of what needs to be done, but I've always had a strong passion for what we do. And I feel that it's, in my opinion, humble opinion, it's pretty much tops between police and fire for our community. And so it was like, I better get out of the way, because I'm always about progressing, and I didn't see it happening under that current leadership.
But when you say that you come to a realization that it's time to get out of the way, especially for the point that you made about knowing that there are other people that are eager to progress and you creating a vacancy so someone could step into that, that admittedly is very selfless, right? But how do you reconcile that in your mind if you think to yourself, well, I still got more and I still got more in the like, sometime what would you say to somebody if they're mulling over, "Am I still the right person for this job?" If they truly believe they got more in the tank to give, and it's not necessarily time to step away. Um, and just to expand on that a little bit, I think maybe like societally today, you hear people say, well, just do you, right? You're never going to please everybody. Just you keep doing you. And that sounds good and it's a feel good statement. But what about what you were saying about true self awareness when there are signals there, right? You can't just go through the life just doing you all the time.
Right, right. And Eric, yeah, lots of variables that went into that decision. And, we're all human beings, right? And some of that was actually relationship. There's just some walls that I could not break down for whatever reason, without naming any names. The person I had to answer to, just I don't know, just didn't have the confidence in me, didn't feel there was that connection wasn't there. And I knew that there were some people that were in the queue that could be the chief that actually did have that connection. And that's okay too, right? It's just normal. It's just a normal part of life. Not everybody's going to get along. And I thought, for if Billings Fire is going to progress, then, one of these other individuals that can connect with said individual should be in that role to help them move forward. Plus, there was other opportunities out there. Yes, I wouldn't be here if I didn't think I had more in the tank. And so blessed and fortunate that they felt confident in me to lead this organization because yeah, I still have that passion to do things. So, it worked out. It was wins for everybody. Someone else gets an opportunity to sit in that seat and I get to go on somewhere else and try to apply my past experiences and knowledge in a whole new organization.
And so you drive down from Billings or fly or train or however you got here. You walk into Mountain View as the new chief, get sworn in as the new chief. Obviously, like every department, Mountain View has a history, proud traditions, ways of doing things. So how do you arrive as a chief in an organization that's already there long before you and honor what exists, but also knowing in the back of your mind that I was hired here to do a job and lead this organization into the future. And so how do you reconcile those two things?
So yeah, you're right. And one of the worst things you can do as a leader going to wherever, private sector, public sector, it doesn't matter. You're coming in to lead an organization that, like you said, has a history. They've been around for a while. They have their way of doing things. And then, a group of individuals or a collective says we need to bring in a fresh perspective. And that was me. I think one of the single worst things you could do is to come in and do wholesale and sweeping changes to an organization. You're basically saying your way is irrelevant. Your way sucks. And that is a huge insult. Man, you want to talk about resentment and starting off on the wrong foot. Come in like Yosemite Sam with the guns blazing and pow pow pow. We're changing everything. That's just not the way to go. Taking the approach to learn and listen, learn their history, learn what took place, learn the traditions, their values, and grow with the organization, not as somebody coming in saying, I'm going to lead you. You guys have been doing it wrong. We're going to go my way. That's just not how you do stuff because they wouldn't have existed this long if they were that bad, right? There was, as you said, proud traditions and a very solid foundation. And I have learned this place is loaded with professionals and subject matter experts. They know what they're doing. And so that makes my job easier. And the trust factor just grew tenfold as I learned more and more about these folks from the most junior people all the way up, loaded with talent. And so, I'm in my ninth month and I am still in that listen and learn phase. And, I kept hearing, Chief, when are you going to make these big moves? When are people are waiting. And I'm like, honestly, there is no red flag. There are no alarms going off saying, you people suck. We got to change a bunch of stuff. None of that. There's no urgency. And so I have the fortune of being able to take the time and listen and learn and grow, like I said earlier.
Yeah, but in your mind, and all of that, I think is great, and that was the same advice that leaders would take on when changing army units and other military units, right? to kind of absorb. Don't go in there on day one. But is there in your mind maybe a timeline that you're thinking about, or a signal that you're looking for, or something to transition to? This is my department now. This is our department, right? I don't mean yours as you're the, king or anything, but, you know, I'm here. I'm the chief. I've learned, but there's some things we need to do. Not that you're not doing them now, but is there something that you're thinking about that will, or is it constantly going to be in the listen and observe mode and just, on the edges as needed, you're going to influence people? Because I think it's a little bit of a double-edged sword, right? You want to do those things that build trust, but there are probably, as you indicate, some people that are like, "Chief, it's time. We need you." Right? We didn't hire a chief just to be a random person that warms a seat. We hired Chief Pepper Valdez for a reason.
Yes, and that's fair. And yes, all of the above, what you just said. And so, again, there's nothing glaring that says, whoa, man, you guys are way off base. That's not the case at all. So, there are just some minor tweaks here and there. These are some folks I can tell you, and I'm sure there's a lot of organizations across the country that are like this. They just needed to be let off the leash
Mm,
and do their thing. Make sure that they have my support and let them know that they are competent and and should be confident people, and make your move, do your thing. And if I have a question, make sure you have a justification why you did it. I'm not going to second guess you in public. I'm not going to berate you. There's a reason why you did what you did. Just, hey, when we sit down and talk and I ask why, what were you thinking, and you say I did it because of this, we're done, conversation's over. um and so, you know there's a lot of ideas running around. And again, like I said, these folks just needed to be let off the leash. There's so many things that we can be doing. The mandate when I was brought here was to grow. Well, I said, okay, well, what growth to me means a couple different things. Growth to me means we need to heal internally because of the tumult that has taken place over the years or the past few decades. And we need to heal inside first. And then are you talking, geographically, do we need to grow? Do we need to, are we talking mergers? Are we talking regionalization? What does that mean? And it was both. So we'll know when the time is right. That is one, I'll be honest, that's one of the goals is to regionalize
mm,
because it makes sense, right? Don't understand why we have so many different kingdoms in one area, and it's not right for the taxpayers. You can lower costs while raising the level of service. So there's a lot of different directions that we're going, but with the focus is being continuing to raise the level of service and all the different disciplines that we have. So um, some folks need that clear, defined, we're going this direction kind of thing. I've never been that way. It's kind of like a organically grow as we see things that need to be addressed and tackled. That to me is growth and
mm.
evolution. From anything to we need to change how we do rescue, all the way to we need to change some things in HR, some policies and how we do payroll. It just runs the
Sure,
gamut.
sure.
So, yeah, fair question.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
no, and I appreciate your candor with it. As I was reading more, trying to get your bio together for this episode, I read that you described the fire chief role very much like a CEO position. And in fact, when I looked at the email exchange that we had, your signature block does say fire chief and CEO, which is interesting, right? Where does that come from in your mind, Chief? Do they teach that at the National Fire Academy, or did it hit you somewhere to say, I think I am the CEO here, and how does that give you? I mean, it's symbolic certainly, but how does that give you a different lens that you look through when you lead day to day?
Yeah, it's again, I talked earlier about being blessed. A lot of folks come to me and say, "Hey, we're so grateful that you're here. We appreciate you being here." And I remind them, "Look, we found each other. I'm just as grateful. We needed each other, and I feel like it's the perfect marriage." I have been blessed to be the chief of a city fire department, and I can tell you to have that ability to be able to compare a city department versus a district, same mission, completely different in how they are run.
Mhm.
And I am learning. And it's the beauty of it is I was also an accountant for 4 years. So I worked for a small accounting firm. So I have that business acumen and the business background. And so I've been able to marry those two worlds. I get to marry the business side of things and I get to marry the fire side together. And so it has been awesome. And I had a couple of board members tell me at the very beginning is we need you to be a CEO. And it hit me. There truly is a business side of things. How
Mhm.
our firefighters get their boots and the nice equipment and the nice rigs that we're in and the top of the line this and the top of the line of that. That takes some business side to do, right? And we have going back to what we said earlier, I'm I am loaded with experts on my team that can run the organization from the inside are looking in, operations and support services and administration. I've got those people, right? Handle the hazmat, handle the rescues, handle the training, EMS, all of it. I have to be outward looking. I'm the one that's going around making sure I have good, solid relationships with all the elected officials out there in the community as the fire chief, educating on why it is that we do what we do, how we do what we do, and so forth, so that we can continue to grow and procure funding to so that we survive, so that it's a sustainable
Mhm.
thing or service that we're providing. And so I took on that challenge and I talked to a lot of the fire chiefs that I'm friends with, and they ask, that question, well, what's it like going from a municipal department to a district? And I'm like, man, it is completely different. It is because now you have everything. You got IT and finance and HR and all that's under you now. Where in a city, it was, "Please, please, please, I'm begging you, can you help me out, Mr. Finance Director or Mrs. HR? I need help in this area, and if they got time for you, they'll help you out. If not, you figure it out." Where here, it's all under the same roof, and so it's awesome. Still learning, and so that's where that
Mm,
CEO piece comes
well,
from.
related to that, Chief, I wanted to ask, there at Mountain View, how with your CEO hat on, how are you keeping yourself from getting pulled in 100 different directions each day, right? You mentioned the difference between municipal fire department and a district and the internal functions, but Mountain View, you guys extend from up on Flagstaff Mountain in Boulder to all the way to Meade, other departments kind of woven in between in certain areas, like in Longmont. You've got a robust EMS function, you've got tech rescue, you've got a big hazmat program, you've got the wildland interface there. So I don't know how that lines up with your experience in Billings, but it just seems like a lot of, cats and dogs you got to herd each day. So how are you staying focused?
It is awesome. I'll be honest with you. It's fun. It's challenging, which is what a lot of us, like yourself, goal oriented, hard driver. You need those challenges, right? And that's why you get out of bed every day. And that's exactly what I'm getting here. I got exactly what I asked for in spades. Um, and there's a lot of different things that are going on. We have many different disciplines. This is a vast district. I mean, 250 square miles. Come on. I mean, it's huge. So it comes with a lot of different challenges, right? Very diverse topographically as well. Light, flashy fields to the east, heavy timbers to the west. So lots of stuff going on. Can't do it all myself, right? And we just talked about it earlier. Loaded with the experts, and that comes with a lot of trust and delegation and empowerment. And what I mean by that is we meet with these folks regularly, you know, and we sit down and essentially they walk me through what they're thinking. They come forward with the problem. Okay. I always say, do not come and darken my doorway with a bunch of problems unless you got solutions that come with it. Tell me that, like I used to tell my two boys, tell me that you worked the math problem at least 3 or 4 times before you come to me, and then if you can't get it, we'll work it together. And that's the same thing here, right? I trust them that they know what they're doing. They wouldn't be in these positions if they didn't know what they were doing. And so we sit down regularly. If there's any, hot topics, tell me what it is. What are you thinking? And then we can walk through it. And then, you know, if they're stuck on something, all right, let's work the math problem together.
Mhm.
Have you called this individual? Have you called some chiefs from other places? Have you called whomever, right? That could be a good resource. We don't need to reinvent. I know we're not the first to do stuff most of the time. So somebody out there's got to have an answer. And these folks, they know that. And they do it again. It just goes back on trust. We blessed to have these solid folks here and try to continue to build on that. But my being pulled many different directions, I see as more of being the sounding board, if you will,
Mhm.
like it's just informational, really. Like again, they've already got it figured out. It's just, hey, chief, I'm just letting you know this came up last week. I sat down with our folks. We walked through it. This is what we came up with. And I'm like, okay, we're good. Let me know if you need anything. So it's running a lot of different directions, but it's not like what you would think. Like I
Well,
have to be the one that has to solve all the problems every single day. It's not like that at all.
so when you say that you really want people to come to you with some solutions and well thought through responses to problems rather than just stating there's a problem, you're saying that in your mind that's more after the fact, right? You want them to take action, you want them to operate within your intent, you want them to do good work tied to the mission and what the department is supposed to do for the community, creating a bottleneck by any means by having people explain their actions to you.
No, if they had to come to me for every single thing, man, we'd never get anything done, right? To your point, there's so many things going on, a million different things going on a day. There's stuff I don't even know about. I'll hear about it later, like from someone in the public, like, hey, Chief, did you know of such and such? And let me get back to you on that. Like, yeah, because there's so much, right? There's not an individual that can have their finger on every single thing. It's just inefficient and it doesn't help those individuals grow either, right? You're doing them a disservice by not allowing them to figure stuff out on their own, right? And so that's part of that grooming or that professional development. Hey, unless the building's on fire and people are hanging out the windows, let's stop. Let's take a breather. Let's think this through before we have to take it to that next level.
So is the real measurement of getting out of the way for folks that if you said, if I wasn't here today, would all of this still happen? Chances are, or it sounds like it totally does. So that doesn't invalidate the reason for having a chief, but that validates your methodology that you're empowering people.
Yeah, man. Today, if you were patting me on the face with a shovel, saying goodbye, you had a good life. This organization is running like tip top. Again, these folks are solid. They know what they're doing. I'm just here as its guidance. Yeah, while there is a vision to grow, it's just kind of again, like we said at the very beginning, it's just kind of watching, making sure people are staying within the bumpers, and the guardrails, and they know what my expectations are. The first and foremost is public service. You treat people fairly, and high customer service is a big thing for us. And so, however that ties into whatever your role is in this organization, the final outcome better be: did it make the community safer or better?
So, have you always approached leadership that same way, or were you, when you were coming up younger, as an engineer, looking to take some charge over the crew a little bit and then promote to company officer? Were you more of the control versus backing off mindset then, even though maybe you mentally didn't wanna be, but that seems like it comes with the job, and then you've evolved over time to just building an environment and a culture filled with trust where control isn't necessary anymore.
Yeah. So, young, you get an opportunity to lead a one or two person group, especially in the wildland arena. That's where you really get the first taste of that kind of stuff, on the boss or on an ambulance where, it's a two-person crew and you're the paramedic in charge and so you're leading your crew. There was some control, and that control came from insecurity
Mhm.
and some incompetence, right? You're new, mid-20s, you don't know squat, right? You don't know anything in the public safety arena, especially. We know life. You really don't know much. And so a lot of that did come from insecurity, but also what helped me was those mentors and watching some of my company officers and battalion chiefs and how they handled situations and the reactions. And then just listening at the kitchen table, like, the bad stuff or the negative stuff equated to the chiefs or the company officers that put the thumb on everybody.
Mm,
Hey, did you tie your shoes right? Hey, did you mop this direction? All the little tiny things that just gnaw at you, right? And the good conversation came from, I really love that guy. I really love that gal because she, lets me do this or, allowed me to do this or spent time with me to make sure I'm doing the right things. And so, you start to learn and pick up on that. And
mhm,
that's where it comes, where we talked about earlier. It's how you treat people because people will resent you if you're always looking over their shoulder because you're saying, I don't trust you. Set those expectations, educate on what it is that you want done, and let them do the thing, right? And that comes from raising your own kids too, right? Your children will resent you because you're smothering and too much going on. Let them, you already raised them, right? Let them do their thing. Let them learn. You're watching to make sure no one gets hurt. But that's the extent of it. They need to fail every once in a while as long as no one gets hurt or killed.
sure,
Uh,
sure. No, I think
and
that's a
so
good way to look at it. I think the other dynamic at play is we all have bosses too, right? And so yeah, even though when I was in the army, I didn't wake up in the morning saying I'm going to flex my rank today. I knew I had a boss that was like, "Hey Eric, why didn't your artillery battery shoot the rounds on target on time?" Or "Why did your unit do this or that?" Or right? Like so there's
yeah,
always a little bird in your ear saying, "Hey, you got to perform here." And
yeah,
sometimes that does manifest itself in a little bit more control than you'd like, but there is pressure to get things done.
yes, absolutely.
We
And
all have
again, that comes with,
bosses.
I think it comes with time and experience, and you've seen some things before, and it's like, it's been here, done that. It's not as bad as you think. Yeah, I know it looks rough today, but we'll all wake up tomorrow. The sun will still come up. We'll all be just fine.
Yeah,
And so you tend to relax a little bit more. And, again, that people start to resent you. And then that resentment turns into, dissatisfaction with their job. And that turns into hatred. And we know we're all, it just leads, it snowballs. And so,
sure.
um,
Yeah. So let's come full circle. Then you mentioned you've been in position for 8 months now. So you are
mhm.
the salty veteran fire chief of Mountain View now. If you had a chance to sit down with a new fire chief with their first week on the job, because we talked a lot about your initial outlook what's a piece of advice that you would give them? Because there are some new chiefs around you, right? There's one right down the road.
Yeah, man, I came here at a time where it was a lot of turnover going on in those chief roles. And so there are a lot of new folks in the area, which is good and bad, right? I didn't get to grab on to some of those old salty chiefs and ask and get their perspectives before they got out the door. But it's good too because you get some new folks in, very excited, got a lot of fire and ready to just get after stuff, right? So it's exciting. What I would say to a brand new chief is listen more, ears open, mouth shut, and just take it in, absorb, because that you can take and get a lot of value out of just listening to folks that have it doesn't matter what rank they are. Your most junior firefighter may have a concept or something that they see that you never even thought of, right? I don't care that you got 30, 35 years in the business. People can surprise you, and you should listen. And so that would be um, my biggest piece of advice. Learn, and as you learn, then that trust starts to build, and you know who your experts are and the people you can lean on. Um, and the ones that, might falter a little bit, do you need to put a little more time into them, invest into them? What's going on? But I think start building your people first before you start building processes and programs and things like that. Know who they are, know what buttons to push, what buttons not to push, because, everybody has different motivations. Some people need a kick in the butt, some people need a pat on the back, and all at different times, right? It's always changing. And so I think when you learn your people, and what they need and what makes them tick, you'll be much better off.
Yeah. I'm going to add one that you forgot, Chief.
Yes.
And by above all else, say good morning to that dang firefighter on the bay floor.
Absolutely. Yes,
There you
you're right.
go.
You are spot on. Please. It's all about how you treat people. And man, I tell you what, people will remember, right? They do.
Yeah. Well, Pepper, I really appreciate your openness and willingness to talk to us today. Your reflections on people and timing and self awareness and just being intentional was great. Your perspective brought a lot of value to the conversation today, not just to other chiefs, but to leaders or aspiring leaders at all levels in the fire service. So thanks for joining me. I wish you the best, continued success. Now that you're 8 months in, just keep it going. And I look forward to continuing to work with you as well. Thanks for being part of today's conversation. If something here resonated, pass it along to someone in your circle. And if you haven't already, subscribed to the podcast, leave a quick review, and check out convergentimpact.com for more leadership resources like webinars, blog posts, and other team tools designed specifically for the fire service. Until next time, lead well, take care of your people, and keep setting the example.